blood had not even dried, as others have said, before Benjamin Netanyahu, who is wanted for crimes against humanity, seized on that tragedy to push the agenda of silencing opponents of his brutal genocide that has been going for 2 years. And what is even more perverse is that it was Netanyahu's talking points, his exact phrases that were repeated by Chris Minns, by Gillian Siegel, by Susan Lay, who came out like his backup singers in the wake of this horrifying tragedy to spread his message of lies and repression and slander against this movement. It has been absolutely despicable. And Gillian Siegel, she is not the envoy to combat anti-Semitism. She was nowhere when the Nazis were out the front of New South Wales Parliament. She said nothing. She's the envoy for Israel. She's come straight out of the Zionist lobby into her position. And do you know what she said in November 2023? She said it was libel to describe Palestinian hospitals as protected by international law. Hospitals that are now rubble across the entire of Gaza.
So this is Town Hall in Sydney, and there's a protest on here tonight. It's the first day. Well, I don't know if Min's got them through today, but they were looking at getting the new protest laws in today, the 22nd of December 2025. And this is a group called Jews Against the Occupation 48 and I don't know, Palestinians Against War. I can't remember the other name of the group. It's a smaller group. They've got a lot of yellow vested people here. It's about 10 minutes to go, so there's not an amazing number of people here. You've got quite a bit of mainstream media in the background here, or seemingly mainstream media, and that guy, he's not sure what he is, but he's a media-ish type. Yeah, there's not any cops. There's like, I honestly thought it would be like chock a block full of cops. Chock a block with cops, but like none. There's zero. So I'm not really sure. And then surely they would have known. He's another media guy. Surely they would have known. Surely they would have known it was on, because it's been well publicised. And I'd say it's it's this. The socialists have got their table here, selling their socialist wares. The usual. They're always here with this rainbow flag. That guy. The yellow vests, I guess, are the officials. They're having a chit chat. Oh, there's cops down the back. There's a few cops there. They've got someone sat down, so maybe there was some drama. There's a guy indicating, so there is something happening, because you got at least 4 cops there. They're just talking to this young man, and there's a couple of other people there. So not quite sure what that's about, but that's it's a very small police presence, considering that this is supposed to be the day of, you're not supposed to protest or whatever once this terror thing is put on and all that. Not quite sure, so I don't know what is. I think that might be something completely different. I don't know. Anyway, so let's have a little relax, and we'll see what's going on. We'll let the sleeping things lie. We'll let them lie anyway. We won't go into that at the moment. So just one cop just turned up. He seems to be looking for someone. Like, I think they might be bringing a car in for the guy that was down there. He's come up from that, and now he's heading back down. So we might just follow him down and see what it's about. But yeah, they've still got the guy sat there. The guy is still sat there on the plant holder, and this cop he came up looking like just looking for a paddy wagon or something. So maybe they're going to take this guy away. I'm not sure what's happened. The talking in the background is just them testing out their. He's still looking. It's like where the fuck's the paddy wagon?
Yeah, nothing's coming.
We've got the other guy. The other guy's sitting there. So yeah, I never know what it is. So I just could pretty much make up bits and pieces. I think this is just him still testing his levels and volumes. It hasn't started yet. But a little bit more, a few more. Wouldn't say it's a massive figure. I've got a feeling the guy in the suit in the middle of the screen there is that something to do with something. I should know. I know all of them. But I I don't really know many of them at all. What's this say? Sanction Israel, Labour Friends of Palestine. So they did have a little note saying, you know, bring your signs. You can bring signs and bring your bring your scarves, kafirs. Didn't say anything about the rainbow flags, but the guy brings his anyway. And these are signs: Unite Against Antisemitism and Genocide. So that's the name of that's the actual name of it today. There's the rest of the signs. There's not supposed to be a march, and I don't think there will be, but you never know with these things. So we shall see. The speeches will happen. He's the fellow doing the microphone, does a lot of stuff. Climate and Palestine and pretty much anything on the left. But not much else at this stage, not a lot happening. But yeah, still a few, well, it's pretty much time now, but they're getting their technical issues fixed. So it's boring for me to chat, so we'll just pause. So the copper's going back again now to look for the paddy wagon. I think, I don't know why, they could have just parked it down the side street and, you know, if they're going to take the guy away, just do it a bit more discreetly than bringing them up through the crowd here. There's a couple more cops turned up the top here, another 3 that I can see, and they're having another 4 having a chin wag. She's having a chewing gum chew, and there's another 2 coming. So they're all arriving. They're getting here last minute. They normally cops are here like before everyone else gets here for a while. But now you've got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down there. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. 2 more coming, 6, 7, and I'm sure there'll be more on top of that as well. These guys are just discussing what to do, I think, with that guy. Not much happening at that end. Oh, he's been let go. There he comes. He's with his 2 friends now. He's just been released. It's the ones in the middle of the screen there. Not that fellow in the green, but the ones behind them. It's the young man on the left, and then the red-haired guy and the lady who were filming, and that was what it was about. It's all done and run. And the cops are in the background there, just having a chinwag now, having a chat as well. So that would indicate that it is now 5 o'clock. It's time to rock. This copper's on his way back down now to see his friends and wonder why. He'll probably be wondering why they've let go, but anyway, who knows? I think it's a bit of a non-event, something or other. Who knows what it was? All right. Again, like I said, it's just, if I'm just standing around chatting and talking about what's happening, it's kind of boring, so I'll shut up until the speeches start.
Unceded Gadigal land in solidarity with the Jewish community who were viciously attacked during Hanukkah, with innocent people senselessly murdered, and a community that's been targeted for their faith and is feeling a lot of fear at the moment. So we're standing shoulder to shoulder with them tonight through that fear, through grief, through anger. And I think as well, you know, it's worth mentioning that the Jewish people, many people here tonight have stood shoulder to shoulder with the Palestinian community through their grief and through their fear and their anger for the last 2 and a bit years. So, and for much longer as well, you know. We know that long before October 2023, Jewish people have been at the core of the movement for liberation for Palestine. They have fought together. We've rallied. We've campaigned for boycott, divestment, sanctions. We've called on our government to stop arming Israel with weapons and with intelligence sharing arrangements. And the target of our movement has always been the violence of the Israeli state, and never the Jewish people. And so we completely reject the shameless political attempts to pin this anti-Semitic attack on this movement for Palestine. Right now, Chris Minns is using this moment to crack down on pro-Palestine rallies, saying that our rallies have made Jewish people unsafe. And let us be clear, it is dishonest to do that, it is disrespectful, and it has stoked division rather than unity. So we have several speakers tonight. We have Jewish speakers, we have Palestinian speakers, we have speakers from representatives all across our movement, and First Nation speakers. So we will start with that. So I'm going to hand over to Uncle Ken Canning, who's a Murray poet and activist. And in handing over to Uncle Ken, I'll acknowledge the deep foundations that First Nations people have laid on this continent for that anti-racist fight. A fight that's, you know, against all forms of racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and for Indigenous rights. So I'll hand over to Uncle Ken.
First of all, I can't give a welcome to country because I am not from this land. I'm Bidjara from southwest Queensland. But I would like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of this land, whose land we stand on. As Tilly said, land never ceded. And it's worth noting that the mindless and cruel violence that happened the other day was imported here in 1788. And we know too well how the Bondi community are feeling. We've had to live with this for 237 years. But we are here now to give solidarity and our condolences to innocent people who did nothing but go to a religious and spiritual gathering. Nothing at all. Nobody deserves what happened to them. Nobody. That cannot be condoned by any group or any side of politics. It can never be condoned. We have victims out there who are still in hospital. We have families that are grieving badly for what happened. I know there's a lot of talk about how, when, where, or why, but I will ask people to be very mindful of what you put on social media. Very, very mindful. I've kept off social media because there are family members who do have social media. And they may read some of the stuff that's going on, and some of the stuff going on social media sometimes is not very healthy. So please think of those who are left there grieving and what they might see that will only add to that grief, only add to it. And we don't need to, as a community, add to any more grief that has been put forth. We have also had groups of people pointing fingers at certain other groups of people. I don't want to make names or mention because I don't want to add fuel to the fire. But these two people were the people responsible. These two lunatics and callous murderers committed this atrocity. It's like saying Martin Bryant is like every white person in Australia. It's like saying that fella Tarrant who committed the massacres in New Zealand is representative of every white Australian. No, this is not on. Yes. This sort of mentality will only and can only ever cause further divisions and can only ever cause further violence. I'm very disappointed and very disappointed on behalf of anybody who's suffered this type of violence at some of our politicians and some of our lobby groups who have used this for their own political purposes or their own lobbyist purposes. They have used this. This is such a disgusting and appalling way to react to a national tragedy. This is an appalling way. Now, the very same politicians who are going out for photo ops and going out for sound bites, and the very same lobbyists who are going for sound bites and trying to get their own agenda pushed through, they all have staff. We don't. They have staff. What is wrong with them directing their staff to visit the survivors in hospital? Why don't they do that? Instead of getting there and getting a photo taken for the media, and even some of the media, why don't they send their representatives to talk to those in hospital? Why aren't the politicians knocking on the door of some of the family members whose families were murdered and seeing about their welfare? Not turn up with a whole media barrage. Go along quietly and comfort the families, for goodness sakes. Don't use this as an opportunity to push your own agenda. And that is what we've seen to date, that they have come out of the woodwork and used this grief for their own purposes. And that should never, ever, ever happen. We know here, people are gathered here because we want to show condolences, peace, and most of all, love to those families and to the victims that were unnecessarily murdered. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Uncle Ken Canning. And yeah, before I hand over to Michelle, I did just want to mention, you know, with that message of unity, Chris Minns putting in these anti-protest laws, it's come at a time when actually we urgently need protest because we need to stand up to the far right. And the far right, a Nazi group, attacked Aboriginal people at Camp Sovereignty in Melbourne, in Naarm. And just weeks later, they attacked the Jewish community here in Sydney with an anti-Semitic rally outside New South Wales Parliament. So I think in that spirit of solidarity and anti-racism, you know, every single person in this crowd today, we need the right to march on the streets to defend our communities. So I'll now hand over to Michelle Berkon of Jews Against the Occupation 48, and she'll introduce two other speakers as well.
Thanks everyone. First of all, I acknowledge that we meet on sovereign Aboriginal land. I acknowledge all First Nation people's unbreakable connection with country, and I thank them for their loving stewardship under which all life flourished. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and pledge my solidarity in their anti-colonial struggle. Always was, always will be. We're here this evening to hold a different kind of vigil for the people massacred last weekend. We're here for those who wanted to show up for the victims, for their loved ones and for the community, but couldn't because they wouldn't compromise their humanity by associating themselves with a flag of an apartheid state committing genocide. Please, let's hold a minute's silence for the people who have had their lives, their loved ones and their sense of community safety torn from them so brutally. It's worth noting that the politics of the Jewish group targeted are radically different from our own. That does not in any way compromise our compassion, our solidarity and our grief for their loss, nor should it. This kind of event should never have been politicised. Meanwhile, let's also mourn the manipulation and exploitation of this Australian tragedy by those who want to suppress the voices calling for justice and destroy our democratic freedoms. Please, let's have a minute's silence to reflect on what we've lost. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. I'd like to give back to Tilly. Oh no, I'm introducing my dear friend and comrade Jepke Goudsmit, who has written a very, very suitable piece for this occasion. Thank you.
I too pay my respects to this unceded Aboriginal land, to the Gadigal people, their elders past, present and emerging, and thank you for having me. I am here to mourn, and I am here to warn. One cannot legislate against hate, just as one cannot legislate that we must love. What we can do is create a society where equality and dignity for all is recognized by law and universally implemented. I mourn all victims of terrorism. I mourn the victims of all terrorism. I mourn all victims of racism. I mourn the victims of all racism. One cannot legislate against fear, just as one cannot legislate that we must trust. What we can do is create a society that minimizes the causes for fear and optimizes the reasons for trust. I mourn all victims of violence. I mourn the victims of all violence. I mourn all victims of trauma. I mourn the victims of all trauma. A society cannot boast equality for all, while some of its members are more equal than others. What we can do is protect democratic rights for all and make sure they are universally implemented. I mourn all victims of hate speech. I mourn the victims of all hate speech. I mourn all victims of demonization. I mourn the victims of all demonization. This country is ancient and new. We can build on the knowledge and wisdom of multiple peoples. But if we let our right to freedom of expression and public gathering be tightened into a corset that favors some above others, that potential, that wisdom will be suffocated. I mourn all victims who cried, "I can't breathe." I mourn the victims of all suffocation. I mourn all victims of intimidation. I mourn the victims of all intimidation. As a member of the United Nations, Australia should uphold its charters, agreements, and resolutions. For example, as a member nation, Australia is obliged to prevent and stop the crime of crimes, genocide. If the Australian government is negligent in its duties, shouldn't the people of Australia be entitled to call them out and urge them to take proper action? I mourn all victims of negligence. I mourn the victims of all negligence. I mourn all victims of hypocrisy. I mourn the victims of all hypocrisy. How often do we see that the perpetrator of violence blames the victim? That the perpetrator claims innocence, escapes punishment and correction, but the victim is paying for the crime. Do we as a society not have a responsibility to make sure such mix-ups get untangled? And should not that be the case in all arenas, big and small? I mourn all victims of unjust blame. I mourn the victims of all unjust blame. I mourn all victims of misinformation. I mourn the victims of all misinformation. There is a Sephardic song from the 16th century in Spain that sings about the importance of learning how to distinguish between falsehood and truth. La vida es un pasaje por ganar avantaje. La muerte es un viaje, la mundo de la verdad. Mis hermanos, mis queridos, venid a vuestros oídos, el que bajo sale corrido en este mundo falso. La vida es un pasaje por ganar avantaje. La muerte es un viaje, la mundo de la verdad. May we gain wisdom to see clearly and courage to uphold truth, and may we do so together.
Powerful poem and voice. I'm going to hand over next to Alan Olman, also of Jews Against the Occupation 48.
Old age. I'd like to begin by thanking the Gadi people on whose land we're gathered today and acknowledge the Aboriginal sovereignty and ownership of our country. The genocide of Australia's Indigenous people and the continued violence and marginalisation that is their lot in Australia today is a gaping wound in our community. The continuing heroic struggle of Aboriginal Australians is an inspiration to us all. Until such time as our Indigenous people's rights are recognised and our Indigenous people are integrated with dignity and fairness into our society, Australia will remain nothing more than a community of genocidal thieves. Indeed, all you need to do is look at the state of our Indigenous people here in New South Wales and realise how disingenuous and how cynical are the very politicians who scream social cohesion as they continue to disrupt and destroy those very social fabrics that tie communities together and create social cohesion. And when it comes to disrupting social cohesion, Chris Minns and Gillian Seagull have just set a new record of demagoguery, duplicity, obfuscation, and malice. They claim that the anti-genocide movement is responsible for the attack in Bondi and proceed to vilify hundreds of thousands of Australians who marched in protest over the genocide in Gaza and the political establishment's complicity with it. And now, Minns and Seagull seek to use this to shut down criticism of Israel. They tried so hard for so long, and they failed. They will not let this opportunity pass without making the most of it. Yet no amount of confected anger and disingenuous displays of rage can cover up their rhetorical sleights of hand and their lies. No amount of disingenuous display of rage can cover up their complicity in and responsibility for promoting anti-Semitism for their own political purposes. They assert that the attack was motivated by the anti-genocide movement, yet we now know that the assailants were affiliated with Islamic State, a staunch opponent of the Palestinian movement. We now know that the assailants joined Islamic State many years ago. We now know the perpetrators armed themselves and prepared to attack before the onset of the current genocide in Gaza and the mass protests. And we now learn that the security agencies have so far not found any link between the assailants and the pro-Palestine movements. But that is not going to stop the rhetoric coming from Seagull and Minns And what is the actual logic behind Min's and Siegel's assertions? That if the anti-genocide movement had not protested against the genocide, the perpetrators would not have realized the genocide was going on? Had it not been for the protests, the two Islamic State terrorists would not have been angered by the genocide? Or perhaps Siegels and Mins and others argue that the anti-genocide movement ties the genocide to Jews. But the anti-genocide movement never conflated Jews with Israel and Zionism. And we can sure about that because if there had been even a shred of evidence that we did, Mins and the Zionists would have had a field day, but the opportunity never came. In fact, it is Mins, Siegel, not us, it is them, and Zionists like them, who continuously use Jews and as political human shields for Israel's genocide. We protested against Israel. Mins and Siegel insisted the protests are about Jews. Jews fully participated in these protests. Mins and Siegel claimed that we were self-hating, anti-Semitic Jews, dubious Jews, or fringe Jews, or you name it. In fact, we spent years now working to decouple Jews and Judaism from Zionism. Yet Mins and Siegel and the rest of them insist on conflating the two day in, day out. And all so that they can shut down criticism of Israel in the name of social cohesion. So it is not us, but them and their mates in the Zionist lobby who are saying Jews equal Israel, Jews equal Zionism, and by implication, Jews equal genocide. So much so, in fact, that if the attack on the Hanukkah beach event had in fact been motivated by outrage over the genocide, and it probably was not, but if it were, then Siegel and Mins can assume substantial responsibility for the attack precisely for going out of their way to conflate Judaism with Zionism in order to deflect criticism of Israel. And this is not the end of Mins and Siegel's complicity. The Mins government and its law enforcement agencies have spent so much time and so much energy monitoring, harassing and policing anti-genocide protesters, environmental activists and other progressive activists in a desperate attempt to curb the criticism of Israel's genocide and Australia's complicity in it. One must wonder whether this over-policing came at the expense of monitoring Islamic State cadres and Nazi activists in New South Wales. Indeed, Mins might be able to claim quite a bit of responsibility for the attack, even if it was not motivated by the genocide. And it's not only Mins, but also Gillian Siegel, whose priorities scream to high heaven. She spends all this time chattering about anti-genocide mobilization being anti-Semitic, but when we see white supremacist thugs marching down the streets, when we see bona fide Nazis demonstrating outside Parliament House with some pretty awful anti-Semitic slogans, not a pipsqueak, not a complaint, no political pressure, it's not a problem. She does not care about anti-Semitism. In fact, promoting anti-Semitism and conflating Jews with Zionism is at the heart of the Zionist business model. And things are now set to get a whole lot worse. We're seeing now the culmination of a process of bullying, intimidation, and political coercion that is aimed to shut down public democracy in Australia and shield the active participation of Australian governments and large corporations in the genocide in Gaza. And what would the effect of this be? What would the effect be of shutting down civil liberties in a clearly false claim of protecting Jews? What would the effect be of the continued intimidation of Palestinians, Arabs and Muslims and their erasure from the public arena and pretending it is done for Jews? What would the effect be of shutting down legitimate political avenues to protest against the horrific continuing genocide in Gaza and claiming this shutdown is done for Jews? Mins knows the effect. of such policy, what the effect are of such policies. And so does Gillian Segal. These are politics that seek precisely to encourage violence against Jews, violence that can then be used as a pretext to crack down on opposition to the genocide. All this is good for genocide. All this is good for anti-Semitism. But it is bad for Australia, bad for Jews, and a catastrophe for political cohesion. So, Chris Minns, if you hear me, we don't want your politics of hate, we don't want your obfuscation, we don't want your attack on civil liberties, and above all, we don't want to be made human shields for Israel's genocide and your complicity in it.
Thank you so much, Alan. That said it all. So genocide is a crime, protest is not. 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 Thanks, everyone. Thank you to both Michelle and also Jepke and to Alan for all speaking tonight. I think I can speak for all of us in the crowd who aren't Jewish when I say that, you know, we understand that there is deep diversity in the Jewish community, and we take very seriously our responsibility to not buy into the propaganda that Alan has just talked about, the propaganda that conflates Jewish people with the state of Israel. And I think it's important to say that by saying it stands for all Jews as it commits a mass slaughter, Israel has driven that anti-Semitism, and we reject that, and we know that Jewish identity and Zionism are not the same thing, and Jewish people should never be held responsible for the crimes of a state, just like Muslim people should not be held responsible for the crimes of 2 gunmen at Bondi. So I'll now introduce a Palestinian speaker, someone who has exemplified the passionate opposition in this movement that we have to injustice everywhere in all of its forms, Sara Saleh, who is a Palestinian writer and human rights lawyer.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to begin by acknowledging that we gather here today on stolen land. Strong, staunch, Gadi country. Land that was never ceded. Always was and always will be. And I want to honor Redfern, mere kilometers from here, a site, an epicenter of resistance, truth-telling, and sovereignty. That is my North Compass every single day. My Northern Star and my compass. I want to thank Uncle Ken, Michelle, Alan, and all the speakers for their words, as well as the organizers for making this happen. It's so important that we gather here in this moment. I am here to talk about the anti-protest laws, but first I want to speak directly to my Jewish friends. This has been a devastating week, and I want to say this in earnest, as an unequivocal point of connection, as someone in shared community with you until the end. We know all too well what it is to live in fear. We know what it means to feel unsafe in the world, to feel targeted, to feel that your humanity is conditional. I do not accept that for you. I do not want it for you. I want a world built on love, care, community, and safety, not supremacy. And so it must be said clearly, loudly, it was Zionists who betrayed this moment and once again showed their true colors. Before bodies were even buried, before blood was dried, grief was cynically and grotesquely weaponized to push an existing political agenda. Not for Jewish safety, no, but for Zionist impunity and the protection of the Israeli Zionist state. those who know us, who have struggled alongside us, who have stood with us for the last 2 years and long before that, know where we stand. They know we are in this together. They know our vision. So when we say no to violence, we mean everyone living free from harm and racism. When we say from the river to the sea, we mean freedom, dignity, and equality for all. And when we say liberation is our goal, we mean a deep love. We mean collective liberation, or it means nothing at all. Governments, however, do what governments have always done, particularly colonial governments, and what we should never accept. They exploit tragedy to consolidate power. Shame. Netanyahu's conduct has been despicable. Turning grief into a political point-scoring exercise is morally bankrupt, though entirely predictable. But we must stay focused here in this moment on Premier Min's. What we are seeing now is a knee-jerk response designed to serve existing political interests and really an extension of colonial practice. After 2 years of normalizing mass murder, of being complicit in it, is it any wonder that the response to a horrific incident is not genuine care, restraint, or accountability? It's not to give our Jewish friends space to process, but rather it is an attempt to capitalize on fear and grief for greater control. We must not forget, my friends, this falls squarely at the feet of Chris Minns and his government. So let us be precise about what is happening here. The right to protest is not a gift from this government. It is a foundational democratic freedom recognized under international human rights law and embedded in democratic tradition. Freedom of expression and freedom of assembly exist precisely to protect what are seemingly disruptive and dissenting voices that stand for justice. So what the Minns government is proposing is not proportionate, it is not necessary, and it is not evidence-based, to say the least. These laws are being justified through fear rather than fact. This is only political expediency. When governments rush through laws in moments of collective trauma, they bypass scrutiny, suppress dissent, and permanently lower the threshold for state power. See, emergency logic is distorted into permanent law. And history shows us this clearly. Once protest is criminalized in one context, it is expanded to others. Environmental defenders, First Nations activists, workers, students, journalists, unionists, anyone who challenges power becomes a target. Anti-protest laws do not make communities safer. They make governments safer from accountability. They do not prevent harm. They ensure that violence carried out by the state or sanctioned by it happens without resistance. Tragedy should mean we come together. Time and again, we are presented with opportunities to respond in ways that are trauma-informed and victim-centered. Time and again, governments and those aligned with power choose a more dangerous, malicious route at our expense. They manufacture fear, they turn entire communities into suspects, and turn all of us into potential problems. And friends, I refuse. I refuse. We refuse. I stand corrected. So allow me to end with the words of beloved Palestinian journalist Maher Moghrabi. I don't want any child anywhere in the world to die the way Matilda did. And I don't want any father in any community in the world to go through what her father went through in her final moments, or what he must be going through now. And that is precisely why I intend to keep saying, globalize the Intifada and free Palestine. Thank you very much.
I think if Sara can say it, we can all chant it with us. So from Gadigal to Gaza, as the Intifada. From Gadigal to Gaza. From Gadigal to Gaza. From Gadigal to Gaza. And when we chant that, we chant for the shaking off of oppression. We make that chant because to prevent us from making that chant is racist. It is a chant in Arabic and is a chant that calls for liberation for Palestinians and for people all around the world. So thank you, Sara. I think Sara spoke really powerfully about some of the draconian laws that Chris Minns is currently threatening us with. You know, they could be used to stop not just authorised marches on the road, they'd stop us from having authorisation at all, but they could also be used to shut down static gatherings like this one tonight. When our community tries to come together, they could be able to move us on, and they could stop us from chanting slogans that are for liberation. So for our next speaker, I'd like to introduce Tim Roberts, the President of the New South Wales Council for Civil Liberties, who have been unequivocal in their opposition to Chris Minns' new anti-protest laws. Thank you, Tim.
Hello, friends. I cannot add anything to what has been an eloquent and quite frankly beautiful list of speakers beforehand. So in the humble presence of all those people, I can only add, I guess, and make express the implied. I am brokenhearted. What happened in Bondi was an attack primarily on our Jewish community, and of course an attack on all of us. As I watched the violent images, which were concerningly shared and alarmingly quickly across social media, I was shocked and quite frankly traumatized by what I saw. It caused me great distress to see it, but then to have my grief interrupted, my processing of that, by a government that deliberately used this moment to progress what has been a long-standing agenda to oppress protest and speech, can only infuriate and divide and continue to spread hate and division in our community. And I condemn the Minns government for doing what they've done. And the real sickness and evil of what they've done is here. I'm looking into your faces. My heart has broken, but my healing is quickened by looking into comrades, colleagues, friends who stand with me in my grief, but also my pain and what the community is doing to itself in endorsing the Minns government in this course of action. That is the crime that's before us now. A government is attacking our ability as a community to assemble together like now, look each other in the eye, stand shoulder to shoulder, to call out hate, but not shy away from the complexities of the problems before us in our community. The Minns government is increasingly, obviously, incapable of doing anything really meaningful with a society's complex problems. They have a dim-witted approach to criminal regulation, an appalling approach to workers' compensation rights, and frankly, no concept of what true social cohesion is, in that they continue to speak to that as if they're doing anything close to it. Other speakers have already spoken, I think, more eloquently to that point. So all I will say here is, when we say that the Minns government is attacking our social cohesion, that's not a joke. There is a real risk here that these divisions get worse, that increased anti-Semitism out of this oppressive speech style. As we silence communication, as we oppress communities, we increasingly increase the risk of that damage growing and that hate spilling over. So I caution you, friends, as we stand shoulder to shoulder in this, as we fight these changes, and quite, obviously the ones that are coming, we must be fervent in our commitment to peace and non-violence as we do this. We must oppose these laws vocally, loudly, persistently, but we must do so in the spirit of peace and mutual humanity and dignity and respect to each other as we do it. I commend those parliamentarians who are standing up and opposing these laws in the parliament as we speak. The Greens in particular have been a leader in this, in opposing the laws that are... But they are not alone. They are members of the Labor caucus that are also fighting and pushing this, and also other members of the crossbench. So I commend them all to that work. And also you, to the next step. Whatever happens today with these laws or tomorrow with these laws, it doesn't take away the fact that we have that right to assemble. And I'm sure that I'll see faces like yours in the future at other rallies. That doesn't change. But we have an opportunity to oppose laws that are coming down the track as well. Minns is committed to restricting some of the phrases we have heard tonight from being uttered in rallies. Calls for justice, calls to shake off oppression. A so-called Labor government is wanting to silence us from doing that. And quite frankly, I want to shake Minns off my life, and I could do so very quickly, please. So as much as we're fed with hate, and as much as it may seem, a hopeless cause, let's write to our MPs. We've got hate speech laws coming down the track. He's made the misstep of shifting it to a committee to be analysed. Make sure your MP knows that you don't oppose it. Make sure everyone you have in your influence has written to their MP to say this is obscene, this is a step on our speech, a step on our rights, our democratic rights, and must stop. Communicate that. We have work to still done. Colleagues, thank you.
When we marched on the Harbour Bridge, we did so as a very, very diverse and broad movement. And the opposition to Albanese and Minns from inside Labor, from their Labor base, has been essential to us asserting that actually our movement is the majority and most people are not okay with genocide. So I'd like to welcome our next speaker, someone who has, a rank and file Labor member who has led that fierce criticism of Minns and of Albanese from inside Labor, Peter Moss of Labor Friends of Palestine.
Today we gather peacefully to exercise our democratic rights to free assembly and free speech. And those rights were not granted to us by politicians or the powerful. Generations before us fought and won those rights. It now falls to our generation to fight again, to safeguard and defend our fundamental democratic and human rights. The fight back for those rights starts here today. We need to build the broadest alliance possible for the repeal of these laws and the restoration of our hard-won freedoms, because these laws are not about saving lives. These laws are about silencing voices. Voices against genocide. Voices for human rights and international law. Voices for the rights and dignity of the Palestinian people. And many of those voices come from within the Labor Party and the Labor movement. Labor Friends of Palestine has campaigned relentlessly since the genocide began. This year, more than 100 Labor branches passed our motion calling on the Australian Government to impose comprehensive sanctions and a two-way arms embargo on Israel. And those demands were backed overwhelmingly in recent months by the Victorian State Conference, the Queensland State Conference, and the Young Labor National Conference. Hundreds of Labor members, including MPs and ministers from the state government, marched across the Harbour Bridge in August. We are proud of that historic stand. It led directly to Australia committing to recognition of a Palestinian state, something rank and file Labor members had campaigned for decades. And we are proud that Labor Friends of Palestine has joined every major Sydney protest for Palestine. The same protests that these laws are designed to silence and stop. We say this to the New South Wales Government and Premier Chris Minns. If you stand for the safety of the Jewish community, we stand with you. But we cannot support repressive, anti-democratic laws that make no one safer, except the war criminals committing genocide in Gaza. We call on the New South Wales Government to step back, withdraw the provisions that limit public assembly, that restrict political expression and expand police powers. Instead, we call on the Premier to engage in meaningful, respectful consultation with all affected communities, to develop an evidence-based policy program that can make our society safer and more inclusive for all of us, to represent all the communities of New South Wales and stand against hate, stand against violence and stand for unity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. I'd like to hand over to a Green speaker next. So a member of the New South Wales Upper House who is joining us here today after opposing these laws in Parliament. So we applaud her for that, and we're really grateful to have her speak today, Dr. Amanda Cohn.
It's wonderful to be here with you on the land of the Gadigal. And I was reflecting as I was walking from Parliament to here to attend a peaceful public assembly of people expressing their views in a democracy, that tomorrow or the next day, if or more likely when these laws pass, that will be in a very different version of Sydney, in a very different version of New South Wales, where this becomes unauthorised, unlawful. So thank you all for taking a stand on what might be the last day that we can actually do so. I want to talk about what happened at Bondi, and then I also want to talk about what happened in Parliament today. Last Sunday, people were swimming and surfing at Bondi Beach. Kids were building sandcastles. People were running with their dogs. Families were sharing meals, and the Jewish community was celebrating the first night of Hanukkah. And at 6:47 p.m, that sacred space was desecrated by two violent, hateful men. They attacked the Jewish community, they attacked the Hanukkah celebration, but their actions haven't just scarred and traumatised the Jewish community. Bondi is a place that was cared for tens of thousands of years by First Nations people. It's a space where so many Australians go to connect with nature, to heal, to spend time together with community. It's a precious public place. And those violent, hateful men attacked the Jewish community, and in making the Jewish community less safe, they actually make all of us less safe. The Parliament, on behalf of the community, has some really serious and complex challenges to contend with. We do need to deal with anti-Semitism in New South Wales. We need to deal with gun violence. We need to deal with hate, prejudice, radicalisation, with extremism, to actually honour the memory of the victims of that attack last week. But what we're seeing instead from this Minns Labor government is a knee-jerk reaction. There's a political opportunism in using this tragedy to crack down on our democratic freedoms. I was at Bondi just the morning after, on Monday morning last week, and there was a moment of silence, of stillness, of shared grief, and locals came to tell me stories about what had happened, and they were all stories of compassion, of bravery, of community. I'm sure you've all seen the photo of the lifeguard running barefoot from Tamarama to Bondi. They were the stories of the heroic paramedics and other first responders, the doctors and nurses who worked through the night at our hospitals caring for people, of the ordinary volunteers who ran towards danger rather than away. When I think of this event, I want to remember the 50,000 people who donated blood the day after the event. There's been such an outpouring of love and support and generosity and compassion from the community. It's the community who's actually leading by example, and that's the example the state government should be following in responding to this. The real root causes of hate, of prejudice, of radicalisation and extremism are inequality and disconnection. Yes. When people can't actually get a roof over their heads, we're in a housing crisis, when people can't put food on the table, they become desperate and look for alternative explanations. And when we're divided as a community, when we don't know people who might be different from ourselves, it's very easy for extremist movements to recruit, to scapegoat people who are different from yourself and say that your problems are because of those people. That is not a problem that we can stamp out or arrest our way out of, or that we can legislate against. The work that the government really needs to do is supporting that grassroots, genuine compassion that we know exists in the Australian community, that we have seen in the past week. It's about actually supporting people to be able to come together and heal and connect like you are today. It's about actually having opportunities to connect with people who are different from us and making sure that people's basic needs are met so that they're not so desperate to be looking for alternative explanations for the issues that are impacting them day to day. So instead we've got this bill that infringes on our democratic rights, and not one person has been able to explain to me how this will make anybody safer. At best, the anti-protest provisions are a distraction that will give the appearance of doing something, but that will not make any meaningful difference. At worst, these laws stand to make the community a whole lot less safe. Unfortunately, it's looking very likely that these laws are going to pass the Parliament. Shame! The Minns Labor government has the enthusiastic support from the so-called opposition. I'm not a lawyer. Before I was elected to Parliament, I was a GP. But some lawyers far smarter than me have told me that these laws are probably unconstitutional. So I hope that there will be an opportunity to get rid of these provisions through the courts. But that isn't much solace when we've got a vast majority of parliaments who think that stamping out protest is going to make anyone more safe. And I stood shoulder to shoulder with so many of you on that magnificent day when we walked across the Harbour Bridge in the rain. And it's just such a basic act of human decency and basic human compassion to stand against the deaths of innocent people. Today we're standing against the deaths of innocent people at Bondi last week. On many other days we've stood together against the deaths of innocent people in Gaza. This shouldn't be controversial and it shouldn't be difficult. And I hope that very soon we'll be able to stand together again.
Cohn, and yes, as a movement, we do have to assert that we are not going anywhere. And, you know, the reason why is because the genocide is also not going anywhere. We've seen, you know, continuing killings in Gaza, in the West Bank. We've seen children freezing to death just in the last couple of days. And we need to be able to protest, to stand together for Gaza, for the West Bank, for Palestine, but also like many people have talked about, to fight the far right, to fight for Indigenous justice and much more. So I'll hand over to our final speaker tonight, who is Adam Adelpour from Stop the War on Palestine.
Tilly, and thank you to our incredible speakers who have said what Chris Minns has tried so desperately to stop us saying tonight. We do stand here in grief. We recognise the horror of this anti-Semitic atrocity. We recognise the pain that it's caused. And we condemn the terrorism that we saw on Bondi Beach. But we also recognise that not everyone has been allowed to grieve equally. Michelle Berkon from Jews Against Occupation 48 was dragged out of Bondi by riot cops for trying to express her grief. No one in this state should have to surrender their support for Palestine and their opposition to genocide and pledge allegiance to the terror state of Israel to express grief. We also recognise that these disgusting opportunists who have seized on this tragedy have knowingly unleashed a wave of hate and racism all across the community. We've all seen the Nazi graffiti on the mosques. We've seen the pigs' heads in the Muslim section of Narellan Cemetery. But we've also seen New South Wales police acting like a lynch mob, dragging young Muslim boys out of their car, ramming them off the road, beating them senseless on the street, and getting a pat on the back from Chris Minns for doing it. The racists in the street who have intimidated many people who would want to be standing here tonight from coming are following the lead from the racists in our parliaments.
Exactly.
So, as others have mentioned, it's now very clear that these disgusting murdering attackers that unleashed the hate on Bondi Beach, that these people were aligned with the ISIS terrorist group. But the blood had not even dried, as others have said, before Benjamin Netanyahu, who is wanted for crimes against humanity, seized on that tragedy to push the agenda of silencing opponents of his brutal genocide that has been going for 2 years. And what is even more perverse is that it was Netanyahu's talking points, his exact phrases that were repeated by Chris Minns, by Gillian Siegel, by Susan Lay, who came out like his backup singers in the wake of this horrifying tragedy to spread his message of lies and repression and slander against this movement. It has been absolutely despicable. And Gillian Siegel, she is not the envoy to combat anti-Semitism. She was nowhere when the Nazis were out the front of New South Wales Parliament. She said nothing. She is the envoy for Israel. She's come straight out of the Zionist lobby into her position. And do you know what she said in November 2023? She said it was libel to describe Palestinian hospitals as protected by international law. Hospitals that are now rubble across the entire of Gaza. She wants to preach about how to stop terrorism when she has been advocating the state terrorism of Israel. Now, it's her lead that Albanese has caved to. It's her lead that Chris Minns has followed. We've seen Albanese say he's going to implement these 13 recommendations whose sole purpose is to give someone from the Zionist lobby the power to silence criticism of a state whose leaders are wanted for crimes against humanity. It's worth just appreciating that for a second. This is being accepted completely uncritically and we stand here against it. It's also whose lead Chris Minns has followed, saying he wants to ban the phrase ridiculously globalise the intifada and, clamp down on our right to protest. It is not our peaceful, diverse, united marches alongside our Jewish comrades which have created a toxic environment where human life is devalued and mass murder is normalised. It is not our marchers against genocide. It is the perpetrators of genocide. It is the Israeli state. It is their apologists in our government that have normalised state terrorism and mass murder and created this toxic environment. And all their accomplices, whether in the universities, in the public service, in the police, all of them have created this toxic environment. But it goes further than that. So these attackers were from ISIS, and they were affiliated or inspired by ISIS politics. That's what the authorities are saying. Where did ISIS come from? The leader of ISIS came out of the dungeons of the US occupation in Iraq, surrounded by the stench of 1 million dead, perpetrated by the Howard government, who's got the gall, the audacity to point the finger at us in this moment of tragedy and say we're to blame. If they had listened to the people on the streets telling them not to enter that war, exercising the rights they're trying to strip from us as we speak, there would be no such thing as ISIS. They stand condemned in this moment. Chris Minns, what has he done? Roll out the red carpet for the mass murderers, the genocide profiteers, the merchants of death at the Indo-Pacific Expo, BAE Systems, Lockheed Martin, Thales, the people who know the barcodes on the bombs that just dropped on a wedding in Gaza City. This is what he has normalised. This is what he has made okay. He has devalued human life. He created the toxic environment that these attackers crawled out from, and he wants to point the finger at us who have fought every step of the way to unite the community, to oppose murder, to oppose the state terrorism of Israel. How dare he? We stand here tonight in defiance of their slander, their lies against this movement, and we're proud to stand with everyone who has spoken today and who has joined us at this action. One of the things Minns has said he wants to do is ban the phrase globalise the intifada. As other people have said, this word in Arabic means revolution, shaking off, uprising. If you want to ban a word in Arabic but not in English, you are a racist. And Israel's crimes have become so abhorrent they can only be defended by racists, but instead of dropping his support for Israel, Minns has embraced racism. That's what we saw from this state's police on the streets, and that's what we're seeing come out of Minns' mouth right now. Intifada means uprising, it means revolution. The Haitian slave revolt was intifada. The Warsaw Ghetto uprising was intifada. The rebellion against apartheid South Africa was intifada. If there was more intifada against genocide, there will be less genocide, and we don't for a second apologise for fighting for that. I want to speak about the racism, because Michelle Berkon was dragged out of Bondi by the police. You know who wasn't dragged out? Pauline Hanson. As she spewed her racist bile, as she blamed migrants, she was cheered down there. And her racist lies have been repeated by politicians in different words, Minns, Susan Ley, and all the rest of them. And we need to just stop for a second. Who is Pauline Hanson? She is someone who in August spoke at the March for Australia rally in the ACT. That rally was organised by the National Socialist Network Nazis, who say there should be Hitler in every school. This is who is being empowered by the disgusting racism pushed by Minns and Gillian Siegel and all of the rest of them in this moment. And her racism, her anti-Muslim, anti-Arab racism, which is being repeated, is the gateway drug to anti-Semitic Nazism that we're seeing on the street. So again, if they want to see the culprits for anti-Semitism, stop pointing the finger at us and look in the mirror. Who was counter-protesting these disgusting Nazis? It was us. It wasn't Josh Frydenberg. It wasn't Gillian Segal, it wasn't Chris Minns, and we'll do it again proudly when they try and come out and attack Indigenous people on January 26, at a time when Indigenous deaths in custody are at the worst they have ever been since they started keeping record. So Bondi is a horror. It was a horror. We stand in grief and solidarity, but we also recognise that horror in what has been inflicted on Gaza every single day for these last 2 years, that is still happening as babies freeze to death, that is happening as weddings are bombed, that is happening with weapons provided by this government in the form of F-35 fighter jet parts, with the steel from Bisalloy in Wollongong, with the intelligence from Pine Gap Spy Base. And we make no apologies for recognising the common humanity of the people who've suffered here and the people who are suffering and dying in Gaza as we speak. And in the West Bank and in every country that has been devastated and occupied by US imperialism with Australia's support. So just to finish, no to anti-Semitism, no to Islamophobia. Throw the 13 recommendations from Gillian Segal into the bonfire. Scrap the anti-protest laws. Scrap the crackdown on the Palestine movement, which has set the example for what real unity and real anti-racism looks like in this society. And from Gadigal to Gaza, globalise the Intifada.
By saying, you know, we are not going anywhere. We will be back. We will defend our right to protest, and we will defend our slogans for liberation, for Palestine, for people everywhere, and we will defend against racism and anti-Semitism in all its forms. So I think, you know, we will absolutely be there on the streets on Invasion Day to stand with the Indigenous community for justice on this continent, and we will absolutely be there on the streets again for Palestine. So to finish, I'm going to hand over to a singer. I might hand to Michelle to introduce our singer, and we'll end it after the song. So thanks everyone, and thanks especially, you know, as Adam said, those who haven't had that chance to express their grief, who came tonight, and yeah, we stand with you. We stand shoulder to shoulder together.
Thank you, everyone. To wrap up tonight, we have our beautiful Muslim sister, wonderful opera singer Aysha, who is going to sing for us "What a Wonderful World," which was the favourite song of a little 10-year-old girl slaughtered on Bondi Beach last week. So let's all think about that. Thank you very much, Aysha.
Thank you very much for having me. What I think of Hind Rajab, and I think of Matilda, and innocent lives lost, no matter where they are from and what religion they are, is innocent lives lost. And it's an atrocity to all of humanity. There is a verse in the Bible, Old Bible and the Quran, in both the scriptures, that it says, whoever takes one life, kills one, it's as if they killed the whole of humanity. And if whoever saves one life, it's as if they saved the entire humankind. And it is time that we put aside our differences and start coming together. So please join me, please join me. Please sing with me. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you.
Thank you so much. It's what a beautiful note to end it on. Please, everyone, take care of each other and make sure you leave tonight with, information on the next meetings coming up. Stop the War on Palestine meets every fortnight on Tuesdays, and we need to get organised in the face of this onslaught. So yeah, make sure you leave tonight with the information on how to keep organising and fighting together. Thanks.